We're going to start by copying this code, and we'll go to our base directory, and we're going to create a new file called Gruntfile.js. Let's open this up in an editor. We'll paste in our code, and we're going to remove the things that we don't need. So right now we don't need uglify. We'll end up adding some of this later. And we don't need this right here. And this task isn't going to have anything in it just yet, but we'll leave it as the default. Now we're getting some syntax errors in my IDE for trailing commas, which generally isn't kosher in JavaScript, but for the most part it'll end up being okay in JSON files, which you'll find is valuable when it comes to copying and pasting. So now we have our grunt file and we have a plugin installed. Now let's look at how to use that plugin. So I'm going to go to our browser and I'll jump to the documentation for grunt-contrib-concat. All right, so we've installed the plugin. And now what we need to do is enable the plugin inside of our grunt file. So I'm going to copy this line and I'll go back to our grunt file and I'm going to paste it in right here. It'll go after the init config and before we register tasks. I'll save it and go back to the documentation. And now the protocol for grunt plugins is to list out the options, and then down below all of the options, are some examples. So here's a very basic one that we can copy and edit. You can see that these settings here are added right inside grunt init config. So let's copy this, and I'm going to go back to my editor and paste it in here, right underneath this grunt file read JSON section. And this should be fairly easy to read. So concat is our task. Under our options, there's a separator option, which we can learn more about by going to the documentation page and doing a search for separator. And it says concatenated files will be joined on this string. So that means that as files get pasted together, this string will be added between the code from each of those files. A semicolon seems like a fair thing to leave in here as a default option. And then dist is one of our configuration options for the concat task. We could have multiple ones of these. Right now it's just dist. So if we wanted to run this when we typed grunt on the command line, we could add it here as one of our tasks. I will put concat. And now if we look at the structure of this here, it should seem pretty clear. We have our source files, that is the files that will be concatenated, and then the destination, which is the concatenated version of the file. So just so we get something functional, I'm going to erase these files from the source, but I'll leave in the square brackets. The square brackets are the way that we create arrays in JavaScript. And let's go to our index.html file, and we'll copy the first couple of JavaScript files, or at least their file locations, over into our grunt file. So we'll paste them in and surround them with quotes. I'll add a comma between the items, and then I'll copy the next item, which is micro plugin here. I'll go back to the grunt file and paste it in inside of quotes. I'll save this,